Yes!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode. Sadly, for what may be the last episode of Picard, and certainly one of the greatest seasons of television here on the
Geek Buddies.
And friends.
Hey! These team up episodes screw us up every time. Every time.
You gotta mix the old with the new. That's how it works today. We're gonna have a lot of fun breaking down The Last Generation, this last episode of Star Trek Picard Season 3 from writer, director, and showrunner Terry Matalas. So much to dive into here. 3 different storylines happening within this main episode here to wrap up everything like we got going on. And hell, we had 20 minutes of post-credit scenes in essence, showing us what's going to happen with the rest of the crew. We're going to break it all down here on this show, but let's introduce ourselves first. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel, writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies, and I'm in Florida with my family and friends, and I got too much sun today, as you can see.
And joining us as our special guest, we're so honored to have them on the show, the crew of the USS Enterprise incidents. Couldn't be happier. Scott Mantz and Steve Morris. Gentlemen, how are you?
Steve, you go first.
I'm good. I'm not quite as red as I was a week ago from being in Florida, but I still feel a little bit red. I did spend some time on the beach, but mostly I enjoyed spending some time back with the crew of the USS Enterprise on Picard. It was, I'm still aglow from it.
Absolutely. Mr. Mantz.
Well, if I'm red, it's only because I've been like rubbing my eyes or rubbing my face, for the past few days, because I've watched and rewatched the series finale, ... for Star Trek Picard many times, especially to prepare for this epic deep dive review with you guys, with my partner on Enterprise Incidents. And what television. I mean, this wasn't just great Star Trek. I mean, of course it was. It was peak television, and we're going to get into all of it.
Absolutely. We are going to break this whole thing down here, as I just said earlier, and have some fun doing it. And we are live. So thanks to everybody who's joining us. Already 80 people joining us live right off the bat. Make sure you hit a like on this video and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Really important to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell button. And if you feel like you want to send in some super chats and some Streamlabs as we go through this conversation, maybe you want to get your thoughts out, send us all your cry emojis. We all felt it. We all went through it last night. Certainly that scene between Picard and Jack. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. There's so much here that we're going to dive into. So if you want your questions, thoughts, and comments read out during the show and guaranteed they get read out, then send in your Streamlabs and Super Chats. I'll pin it in the chat in just a second. So you guys know how I like to start the show, which is to basically ask everybody what they felt about the episode. And I'll go to my Geek Buddy co-host first, Mr. Michael Vogel. Please tell us, what did you think of this finale of Picard?
I mean, I think we said this a couple weeks ago. It's great when you're watching a show and you reach a point around halfway through where you just go, I think they got this. I don't need to worry. I don't need to worry anymore. I know I'm in safe hands. And that's how I felt watching this. Like, I wasn't worried about sticking a landing. I wasn't worried about where it was going to end. I just knew they knew what they were doing. And Terry Matalas and the team knew what they were doing. And it was beautiful. It was great. It was satisfying. It just made me happy about Star Trek. And I think that's what this whole season really does, is that if you love Star Trek at all, but particularly if you were a Star Trek kid in the late 80s into the 90s, if you were a Next Generation Voyager DS9 person, I mean, this is just everything you want wrapped up in a giant, awesome special effects budget bow.
Fair point. Steve Morris, your thoughts on this episode here, The Last Generation?
I want to focus on degree of difficulty. We all watch all these shows, and and I listen to the Geek Buddies. There have been a lot of Star Wars shows, Marvel shows, where people have been critical of maybe it didn't deliver on all of the promises of the premise.
Yeah.
And the thing that I want to say is it's actually really, really, really hard to service multiple characters and give you satisfying endings to all of them and satisfying emotional moments to all of them, and to deliver them all within a plot structure that actually works is really, really, really hard. And frankly, I can only think of two other things that are at this level of succeeding at it. And one is Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, where they managed to deliver all that. And the other one is from a person who maybe isn't as popular today as they were a decade ago, but that's the Battle of Hogwarts in Harry Potter. You know, to take all of these plants, all of these relationships, and take the character to a place that is moving and powerful, that is so freaking hard. And I agree with Mike. I actually wasn't worried about it going into this episode because it had been set up so well. I was like, I think they know what they're going to do. I think they got it. And they really did.
Scott, amongst the four of us, you've had the most unique relationship with this series, even going so far as to just a night or two ago, hosting the screening of it at IMAX there with the entire cast of Next Generation with you. So you've seen this finale a number of times. What are your overall thoughts here, having seen it numerous times here for yourself?
Well, I got to say, Johnny, that the fact that they screened the last two episodes in IMAX theaters around the country. Now, the beauty of that is this. To have these last two episodes and the first two episodes, which screened in IMAX at the premiere, on an IMAX screen and have it look like it was meant to be on an IMAX screen, and deliver in ways where the production values of season 3 of Picard were cinematic and epic, more epic than any other show, more epic than most movies, just shows you how top-notch the production of season 3 of Picard was all along. And, you know, especially, you know, when I first saw this series finale, I said that it's the return of the king of Star Trek, because of the way that it does satisfyingly wrap up everything. And also because it has, you know, just like Return of the King, it has a couple of different endings. It keeps on going.
Okay, there's more. There's more.
There's more. But you know what, Mike? It's like, bring it on. Give me more. I want more. I do not want this to end. But also, it really just, you know, I was really thinking about it. And, you know, so many times that Steve and I have talked on Enterprise Incidents about how, you know, this particular season, like, I love season 2 of the original series. I think it's the very best season that Star Trek ever had, next to season 3 of Next Generation. Season 3 of Next Generation was right up there. And even season 7 of Deep Space Nine was just epic and amazing. But season 3 of Star Trek Picard is up there with season 2 of TOS, season 3 of TNG, and season 7 of DS9 as is one of the very, very best seasons Star Trek ever had. And also, I just have to say that the production design, the score, the music, the visual effects, the directing, the writing, and especially the acting. So many of these actors who've been playing these characters for so many years have delivered their career best performances of these characters, especially Jonathan Frakes and especially JERI Ryan. Those are Emmy-worthy performances.
I don't disagree with you. Certainly, JERI Ryan has, I mean, like, over the last 3 seasons of Picard, you know, she has kind of grown into redoing this role again and recapturing the magic of it. But it was really this season where you finally got to see this endpoint from this person who shows up on Voyager for the first time and have it, you know, all the stuff that went on with that and why she got the job and all the stuff you hear behind the scenes, to see all this time pass. And she is finally ending up as a captain.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
An incredible journey. What an incredible journey. And so it's just, for her to deliver that speech and sit there and then have the calm and then see what Captain Shaw said, which we'll get to later. It was great to see that happen here for JERI Ryan, who is really, you know, someone we've known about, but hasn't really kind of done a bunch of stuff. So maybe this opens the door for more things. And sometimes coming home is the best place to be, and they know what you can do. And we'll see if there's a show to come with her as the captain and Raffi there, and of course Jack watching over their shoulders and what have you. So we'll see for sure. All right, we're going to break this one down. We're going to take it to storylines. Is probably the best way to do it. I can't go moment by moment because that's just, we're going to be here for 4 hours if I do that stuff. So we got to jump into it. But pretty long season finale compared to something like Mandalorian, which was a tight 38 minutes. This was over an hour of a finale, which was pretty incredible to witness for sure. But let's jump into the initial start of this whole thing. Scott, Checkov. Well, gentlemen, hearing Chekhov's voice, Walter Koenig's voice. I should have known when Terry Matalas posted a picture of himself with STASHWICK and Walter Koenig there watching the finale that Checkov was going to show up in the finale. And damn it, his voice. What were your thoughts on hearing his voice just right off the start of this episode?
Right off the start, indeed, John. I mean, I was sitting there watching, the link, hooked up to my TV so I could watch it on the big screen. As soon as I heard the voice, I'm like, oh my God, is that Walter Koenig? And when he said, this is President Anton Checkov, I went, oh my gosh. Right from the start, John and Mike and Steve, you have this beautiful nod to Anton Yelchin, who played Checkov in the 3 Kelvin timeline movies. What a beautiful touch. What a clever touch. And to hear Walter's voice, I'm like, oh my God, how did he get Walter Koenig? And, when you're hearing his dialogue, when you're hearing his say, and he's saying, avoid the planet Earth at all costs, farewell. That was obviously a nod to the president's speech in Star Trek 4 when the bounty picks up the signal from Earth when they're going back, for the trial of the USS Enterprise. But also hearing him say, there are always possibilities.
Yes.
There is so much in those few seconds. And here's a little bit of trivia, gentlemen, and to everyone watching. So at the IMAX event the other night, Terry Matalas said, first of all, this is how he got Walter Koenig. Walter Koenig is neighbors with Todd STASHWICK.
That's amazing.
They are neighbors.
Wow.
Now, here's the other thing that Terry Matalas said at the Q&A. He said he wanted to film Walter on camera. He was supposed to be on camera, but they were literally running out of time and they just couldn't do it. So he was just happy enough that he got to do the voiceover. Right. And boy, what a beginning of an episode of a series. And Steve, you and I have talked about this elsewhere, that every episode of season 3 of Picard has delivered, has been great. There's not a dud in the bunch.
But you know what? I mean, and I mean, this will come up a lot in this episode, but this speech is the perfect example. And this is why this show is perfect. This season is so perfect because it's the exact right way to handle nostalgia and Easter eggs and everything else. There's other shows that we cover, shows that we don't, that like flood you with Easter eggs, flood you with references to the point where your average audience is getting confused. And everything that happens, if you are hardcore and you've loved Star Trek your whole life, you pick up the Star Trek 4 reference, you pick up the Spock reference, you pick up all these things. But if you don't, and you're just watching this season because all your friends were like, holy shit, Picard season 3 is awesome, it 100% works. I mean, this applies to the Borg Queen at the end and her like references to Voyager finale, like all of these pieces. Like if you know, you know, but if you don't know, in no way does it take away from the excitement and the emotional impact of this season, which I think, like to Steve's point, is very, very hard to do. Yeah,
excellent point. Steve, your thoughts on this?
Well, it's so funny, when Vogel and I are on a show together, it's so often that I go, Mike's going to make my point. Damn it. But just to add to it is that like a good test, because this is where the difference between something that's just fan service and something that really, really works as part of a show, the good test is if none of the Checkov stuff was there. It wasn't Anton. There were no other references, but you had a moment where the president of Earth said, stay away. Earth is doomed. Protect yourself. Would that moment have been important and fit perfectly into the show? And the answer is absolutely yes. Yeah. And so and that's again where I go, the degree of difficulty is so hard to deliver the emotional moment from the president of Earth while at the same time making 5 references to other things in Star Trek. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah. There are always possibilities. Something Spock told me. Yes, it's so great to have that here in this. And I put my reaction up. I recorded my reaction last night at midnight, and they went up at 6 this morning. And I just, as soon as I heard his voice, I lost my proverbial shit. And certainly you two gentlemen have had Walter Koenig on your show, Enterprise Incidents. And for those of you who don't know, Enterprise Incidents, maybe you're new to that show. It is a show that Steve and Scott have been doing for quite some time, where they break down every episode of the original series. They're now in the animated series, but they've had some wonderful guests, and Walter Koenig was one of those guests. So it must have been an extra special thrill for you guys to hear his voice as well.
Oh, and we were at his house.
Oh, wow. Really?
We were at his house. And it was for everyone listening. If you want to listen to our deep dive with Walter, it was for the Gamesters of Triskelion. So check that out. But back to you, Johnny.
Definitely. All right, let's get into this thing. So the crew of Enterprise assesses the damage here that Space Dock is sustaining, and it's barely holding its own against the fleet's attack. Riker says, well, where's the cavalry? And they realize, wait, they are the cavalry, because Data says no one else is responding. So they realize that the Borg are setting their sights to destroy Earth. Not the first time they've done this, right? We saw that in First Contact when they assimilated Earth. So kind of hitting a little bit of the same beats, but still feeling a little bit different. And knew they tracked down the Borg cube, and it's hiding in the gases of Jupiter, and discover that they are using Jack as a command signal to broadcast their message. Picard decides that that in order to save Earth and the galaxy, they have to destroy this beacon no matter what the cost. And it's really, because in that moment, I'm like, is this old school Picard going, I don't care if you're my family member, the line must be drawn here, this kind of thing. I was waiting for that, but then he says, this is a battle I've been waiting for 35 years. So in essence, saying this has got to end now. And then we split off into these different things. So we'll just focus on the main storyline to start off with here. We see that they look at this thing, and Deanna remarks that she's never felt anything like this version of the Borg cube. She feels this quiet suffering. Beverly asks if she can feel Jack. She says all she can see is completely consumed by the collective. Worf, ever the warrior, is like, well, it looks like no point in no return for Jack. He's pretty much toast. Let's just focus on saving everybody. But Picard knows what it's like to be used, and he says there's a way to get him back. Is that Picard, the father, or Picard, the captain? Either at this point, the lines are blurring. The Borg cube is doling out damage, but it only is at 36%, so it's a little bit lower, so maybe they've got some options here. But just when they're considering what to do, the Borg cube lowers their shields. Picard recognizes it as an invitation, and then they figure out that they've got to sever the connection between the collective and the assimilated fleet, and they'll have to find the beacon on the cube to destroy it. Geordi is certainly the only way they'll be able to destroy the beacon is by beaming down and accessing the system. Beverly and Data managed to pull the life signs from the Borg cube and isolate Jack, the human brainwave. They isolate it there on the screen, and Picard finally understands what he's got to do, and he's the one that's going to beam down there. Riker says, you're not going alone. He has a moment with Beverly Crusher there, a really sweet moment. And then Worf goes, I'm going to. We'll make this a threesome. And Riker,
you hear yourself?
Riker's like, do you even hear yourself? Which is fantastic. And then we head down. But before we head down, we have these moments here on the ship between Riker and Deanna, a silent moment where you know who I am, you know what I've got to do, her silently accepting it. And then Picard turning around, that son of a bitch, turning around, and all three of them looking back and him saying it's been an honor to serve you. Let's stop here. Steve, talk to me about this opening here with all this that's going on, the Jack, the father stuff. You're a father. This moment here when he turns around and speaks to the entire crew and says, it's been an honor to serve with you, gentlemen. Are you thinking that one of these three are going to die, possibly Picard?
That's exactly the thing I was thinking about. And I wanted to ask to hear what the rest of you thought is like, there's sometimes you're watching a show and you're like, look, it's real. I know James Bond's in trouble here, but James Bond's going to make it. It's James Bond, and the fact is that most of the adventure stories we consume are like that. We can, even if we're really stressed out, we can be pretty sure that people are going to survive.
Yeah.
For me, there were moments throughout this episode where I was like, man, Picard could die here. This could be the end of Worf. Maybe they have to sacrifice Jack. Maybe Riker is going to those moments were happening over and over again where I genuinely didn't know if we were going to make it out alive. That alone, I think, is an amazing thing.
Yeah. Scott, your thoughts on this?
I thought Riker was going to be the one to go because we already sort of had a sort of transition with Riker at the end of season 1 of Picard.
Yeah.
So I just didn't think they were going to kill him. But I thought, especially because of the depth of the gravitas, that Jonathan Frakes brought to his performance as Riker all season long, episode after episode. I just was completely floored by the level of his performance. So I thought he was going to be the one to go. But, you know, and you're right. You think James Bond is going to make it. He's going to make it. Then you watch No Time to Die, and you're like, well, I guess it's time to die. He's not going to make it.
Michael, your thoughts on this? So what'd you think of this opening and how they set everything up and figured it out? And Picard's emotion here, which he's only let out a few times when someone has gotten the best of him. And it's always the Borg. The Borg have always gotten under Picard's skin from Locutus on, literally under his skin. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, first, even though, you know, in episode 9, in last week's episode, we got the moment of them sort of entering the Enterprise bridge from the first time. Still, all of them on the bridge having it's us against the world. There's nobody else coming. We're the cavalry. Yeah. It hits just right. Like, it hits just right. As far as them figuring out what to do in the plan, you know, I had a couple people ask me in like the past day, we were texting about it, and they were like, were you upset that nobody died? Do you feel like it would have been better if somebody died? And what I said to them, and I think this is, it's what Steve and Scott are saying, like, it's not about did somebody die or not. It's that, did I believe that somebody could? And more importantly, did those characters believe they could?
Yeah.
And when Riker looks at Deanna and Deanna looks down, and when Picard turns around and says, it's been an honor serving with you, they believe that this is it. They believe this is the final mission. And as an audience member, because it's the finale, because we know this is pretty much it for the Next Generation cast, and because their acting is so on point, we believe it. Now, I don't care that they didn't die. I'm thrilled that they didn't. I'm thrilled that we got happy endings all around. And I thought the way that they ultimately didn't die was pretty fucking cool. So I was really satisfied with it, but I didn't need those deaths to be satisfied. I needed that moment of uncertainty. And that's the real moment that I care about as a fan. And I think they really delivered that. Like, to Steve's point, throughout this episode, I fully believe that Riker and Worf were in mortal danger the entire time they were on that cube. I fully believe Picard would absolutely sacrifice himself if it meant Jack was going to be okay. Like, I fully believe that if Geordi had been like, guys, the only way that we're going to save the entire galaxy is to blow this thing up by slamming the Enterprise into it, I would, like, they're going to do it. Like, I would have believed anything.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I have just one more thing about this setup, which is one of the things I find really interesting is I think, like, among the most morally compromised things in Federation history is thinking about infecting the Borg through Hugh in Next Generation, and then infecting the changelings in Deep Space Nine. And what I find so interesting, just in terms of an ethical situation, is that that is what the Borg and the changelings are doing to the Federation. Is that their revenge is so directed at the moral failings of the Federation by infecting them. And so there's so much of re-examining Picard as Locutus and what that meant through Captain Shaw, of re-examining these familial relationships, of re-examining the flaws within our characters and the flaws within the Federation as we go trying to make things right in this episode, which thematically makes this even stronger for me.
Like father, like son. That kind of thing, experiencing once again here is Jack is attracted to the Borg from some inner thing and goes towards that, whereas, you know, Picard resisted it and then was eventually assimilated. And so we see that they've got to repeat these patterns. But Picard stepping forward, my friend Maggie Lovett, who's a fantastic reviewer on Collider, her review this morning was so incredible. She said the last frontier for Picard has always been fatherhood. And so he is embracing that in this episode, even more so, being willing to go. I mean, the last guy that should be going down of everybody is Picard and his frail physical. But I know he's synthetic, but we know
it's positronic, bitch.
Yeah, sure he is. Yeah, like De Niro was an Irishman. Yeah, he's solely positronic. But I didn't want to see doing too much, and so. But I appreciated that he was willing to go to the fray once more under the breach, like his favorite Shakespeare writer, you know, or writer of Shakespeare. Go ahead, yeah, Scott.
So it's a couple things to point out. First of all, the way that the Enterprise D is not part of the system, where all the other starships are connected, making it much easier for the Borg to not only assimilate but annihilate. So the fact that the Enterprise D was in a museum and that it was off the grid made me think of Battlestar Galactica. Of course, I'm talking about the rebooted Battlestar Galactica from 2003, 2004. Excellent series, by the way. You know, the Galactica was a museum, and then they like turned it back into a ship. But all the moments, you know, we saw the Enterprise D, you know, the last 10 minutes of episode 9, you know, without getting into just like what that meant. Now you are seeing all of these next generation characters, these beloved characters that they've been playing now in a span of 36 years since Encounter at Farpoint first premiered in 87. They are at their stations. They are getting orders. I mean, you have Geordi at Navigations. I mean, he was the navigator in season 1 of Next Generation. You know, and you have Crusher really kicking ass at the weapons console.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Yeah,
it's a whole new meaning. Now they just call her Beverly the Crusher.
The Crusher.
She is not messing around up there.
But also the bridge that they reconstructed for, you know, so it was 50 feet by 100 feet, which was exactly to the same scale that the bridge was built for the Next Generation TV series. And also, Terry Matalas said that, you know, they only had like 5 minutes of nostalgia to like be like, you know, oh my God, this is amazing, and take like the official cast photos, you know, that we've been seeing all over the internet in the last week or so. But they only had 2 days to film all of those scenes on the bridge of the Enterprise D.
Oh, wow.
And just some trivia for you, because I think that's interesting.
Nice. No, definitely.
And Jonathan Frakes put his legs, just stood on every single piece of it.
just
put his foot up over here, put his foot up over there.
If I can't mount it, it can't be on the set.
He's hopping over chairs.
All right, so here we go. So Riker is looking at, they go down there, and I mean, this is something out of First Contact, just the same feeling, a little more of a tomb, but certainly that same kind of open feeling and area, the darkness of this. It's a little bit of a horror vibe to it once we get down there, and certainly the sound cues that that kind of stuff, it helps to kind of give you that mood as well, and that feeling. Once Beverly sends over where Jack's location is, Picard recognizes it, of course he would, where this is in the collective, and he explains that it's time for them to part ways between him and Riker and Worf there, and the trio say farewell. And Riker has a beautiful moment with Picard here, you know, kind of letting him off the hook. You don't got to say it. I know what it is between us. It's all cool. And Worf saying the 2 things that he says. We don't say farewell, and we don't say defeat or something like that. So beautiful stuff between all of them there. And then Picard goes further into the cube, and he finds Jack, who is saying all the stuff that he's, as the voice there of the Borg, now sending out the message. And who is there but the Borg Queen, the great Alice Krieg, back as the Borg Queen, or what's left of the Borg Queen. And we hear this back and forth between the both of them in this speech. They're talking about how she's like, he came to me, he called to me, I'm his mother. And Picard shoots at her, it does nothing. And then she, kind of like Khan, because there have been a lot of Star Trek 2 references, says, you left me to die. You left me out there. You didn't come back and check on me. This is your... So saying all of this stuff, this is the Borg Collective, seeing all of that going on here. But she is certainly, and it looks like as they've looked at some of the Borg, has she turned into cannibalism to stay alive? Is she eating her own Borg in order to stay alive? But we hear her plan. We hear what she wants to do with Jack, that she wants to go after Earth, that she wants to, that they had to evolve to survive. And now they don't want to assimilate. They want to annihilate. And that's their point of view when in what they want to do next. And we see that Picard tries to get Jack out of it, and then in that moment hooks himself into the cloud, which is insane that Picard would do that. I kind of had a feeling it was going to happen, but when it happened, I was blown away. And then we go inside to this beautiful scene between Picard and his son Jack, and the back and forth. And Jack thinks, no, this is peace. I don't hear anything. Everyone is equal. It's all this kind of stuff. And Picard's like, no, this is death. This is death. You don't understand. Come back. Let's go back to this thing. And Jack doesn't want to go. He's like where he is. And Picard, in this wonderful moment, I'm going to get emotional talking about it, says, well, if you're going to stay, I'm going to stay too, and we'll climb out of this together. And it's such a beautiful gesture, and the performances here are just incredible. And like all good Star Trek, love overcomes hate, and Jack is eventually taken out They escape from this thing. And of course, at the same time, Worf and Riker are fighting off these two Borg guys. We see that Worf wanted to use the sword, which is way too heavy for Riker. And then Riker pulls out the phaser going, you could have just used the phaser. What's wrong with you? And they eventually send the schematics to the Enterprise so they can go and get to this thing and shoot it out of the sky. And then, of course, they all end up, and we see the conversation on the Enterprise talking about what they need to do. Geordi realizes they've got to shoot this thing, and once they do, they're only going to have a minute, and they can't lock on them and transport them out. And Geordi asks Beverly if it's okay, because he's essentially dooming Jack to death at this point, or what they think is death. And she concedes, to her grace and to her power as a mother. She concedes because, again, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or in this moment, or the one, yes, exactly. Then they shoot the cube there. Alice goes crazy, screaming no. They initially can't find them, but then Deanna and Riker have a moment, and it is in that moment, using her Betazoid powers, that she can locate him, and then she jumps onto the console, finds them, and doesn't crash the ship like she did last time she was manning the console, and they zap them out of there and take off as the cube blows up. So, Michael, I go to you on this one. What incredible action, what emotional power and resonance in these scenes. And then did you like the way Beverly Crusher, as you said, the Crusher, was dropping all them bombs, and then eventually it was Deanna who had to get them out of there and save the entire crew? What were your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, well, it's a lot to chew on there, but let me see if I can go through it. But one of the things to kind of frame this up, and just like we talked about, I think one of the things that Terry Matalas did so great, and this is what made this series not just, if this was just a Member Berries nostalgia series, you would have had all the cast members show up in the first episode, and by the end of the first episode, they'd be on the bridge of the Enterprise D, and we do that all season. But they didn't do that. It was super earned, and we took time, and every single character got their intro.
Yeah. Riker
got his intro. You had Picard and Riker both on the Titan. You had them doing their stuff. You had your Geordi moment. You had your reveal of Worf. You had, every single person kind of came on when it was time for them to come on. And in this whole sort of ending battle with the Borg, everybody gets their moment. Riker says his goodbye to Deanna. Riker and Worf have their moment on the ship. They got the really funny moment with the sword. Riker can't lift it. Worf just thinks swords are more fun. Crusher literally crushes it with just attacks that Borg ship. Yeah. Data is like,
she's been busy for 20 years, Mike. She's
been busy. Yeah. Data turns around and he's like, guys, Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie. I can totally do this. And he flies the fuck in there and just destroys, when Troy is like, why do I sense excitement? And Brent Spiner is like grinning like a 5-year-old as he's flying into that thing. Like, it's just a perfect moment. And then when it looks like there's no chance for them to get everybody out, and Riker's like, I love you, Imzadi. And Deanna's like, I know where they are. I'm a Betazoid. And like flies in. Like, every single person gets the exact right moment for them to shine. And it really goes like, this is my crew. Like, this is the Enterprise crew. As far as the Borg Queen goes, super creepy, giving me very Angelica Houston and Captain EO vibes, if you're an old school Disney fan.
Wow.
Very, very, very that. But and again, here's like a great moment where if you're a hardcore Star Trek fan and you watch the Voyager finale and you saw Admiral Janeway from the future sort of infect the Borg Queen, you'd be like, oh, okay, I think I see like what's going on with the Borg and like what happened with all that. But if you're just a casual person or you've just been watching the season or you're a First Contact person, it's still like all lines up. It's still all fine. Like Terry Matalas was asked really early on in the season, like, oh, well, is the Jurati Collective from season 2 going to be a thing? And he kind of said early on, the Jurati Collective is their own thing. I feel like the Borg are still licking their wounds in the Delta Quadrant after Janeway did her shit with them. And so you're like, okay, yeah, he literally did know that because here we are. Yeah. All of the Jack and Picard stuff, again, super, super lovely. And I think super powerful because kind of as Picard says right before he jacks himself in, this is literally his biggest fear.
Yeah.
Like ever since Locutus of Borg happened, he has hated the Borg. He has feared the Borg. He has obsessed over the Borg. He has wanted nothing but he does not want to become what he was.
Yeah.
But when his son is in that position and it's the only thing that he can do. His greatest fear doesn't even matter anymore. He just goes for it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's a funny thing to me because we have all of these amazing sci-fi and fantasy series that have these epic backstories and these detailed worlds and these planets and this lore and these histories, but the emotional stuff always comes down to some of the core same things.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's basically like what this comes down to is Jack wants to be a part of the collective because he's always felt alone.
Yeah, he wants to belong. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, having his dad stand there and say, "You're not alone. Like, I'm got you." And this whole series is about how Picard's not alone. He's got his crew. Jack's not alone. He's got his parents. He's got his family. And so it's just, it works. At the end of the day, it's this beautiful, beautiful moment. And then you get that amazing shot, like as you just circle around Jack and Picard as the Enterprise comes in overhead and beams them all up. And you're like, I'm good. Yeah. You can give me 20 minutes of ending now because I am satisfied.
Yeah, Scott. I mean, there were some great character beats here. Yes, Data. I think that's lore, flying them in there, using his gut, a little bit of the lore there, having some fun doing all of that. And also we're seeing the progression of Beverly as the mom here, and also, handling business. She's going to be an admiral, as we find out a little bit later, because of all that she does on this adventure. But then Picard himself, as Maggie was saying, fatherhood, this is the thing. And it's the final thing, the fact that he's willing to stay there connected. He confronts his fear of the Borg. He confronts this. He goes back to that which he feared the most in order to confront it again and have closure. But he is willing to stay there in the collective again for a second. And it's that final act that finally convinces Jack that he is his father and that he will be there for him, which is something he's always missed. And then we have this beautiful moment with, of course, Deanna and Riker. So your thoughts overall on this section, and do you think it was a little too quick the way it was all resolved, or did you like the way it was paced out to where we get the end with the Borg Queen screaming no as everything blows up around her?
Listen, I was extremely satisfied with all the beats in this last episode, and you got to give a big shout out, big kudos, in addition to every single main character from Next Generation, of course, as well as JERI Ryan from Voyager, taking their performances, their characters to a completely a different level, just top notch, really crushing it, going where they had never gone before, so to speak. Ed Spaliers as Jack Crusher gave a terrific performance all season long on the show, especially in this last episode. And, watching those final moments, the hug between father and son amidst all this craziness going on the Borg cube, and the Borg Queen screaming no and everything. But watching Jack Crusher rip off his Borg outfit and walk on the bridge of the Enterprise, still kind of like half covered in his Borg outfit, made me think of part 2 of The Best of Both Worlds, when Captain Picard is kind of brought back to reality, in those final moments where he's still going to be, a little disturbed. This is going to keep recurring throughout the next 35 years or whatever. And so this really did bring everything to closure, and all of the emotion, Mike, that you're talking about. The reason it was earned is because it did happen over such a long period of time. And by that, I mean, let's just say, so the last Star Trek film with the Next Generation cast was Nemesis, which we all know was not very good. It wasn't the Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country send-off that they deserved. But let's say that what we were just watched happened in 2008 versus 2023. Would that have had the same emotional impact? I don't think it would have. The fact that it's so much later in life, when you have these characters, they're older, they're wiser, they're dealing with real life issues like Picard, seeing his son for the first time, his regret over so much over these last few years on Picard. Also, the grief that Riker and Troy have been processing.
Right.
I mean, this is real life stuff, whether it's Star Trek or not. So all of the emotion that we're all feeling was so very, very much earned. And now I didn't think it was rushed at all. I thought everything was absolutely perfect.
Steve, you're a technical mastermind with all these kinds of things. The pacing, you're watching it, you're watching it as a director, you're watching it as a writer, and I'm sure you're watching it as a Star Trek fan, and I'm sure you're watching it as a dad. You're the only dad on this panel, with a child. We could be dad of pets, I'm sure. But like this thing, this whole progression of this story, once they got on to the actual Borg ship in the cube, and the separation of Picard from Riker and Worf. Riker and Worf, we've always enjoyed their kind of rougher bromance, or at times we see them have their moments. I mean, the dropping of the fact that sword is heavy is hilarious, but the back and forth that they have. But then we see Picard and the things that he's doing and confronting this stuff, and the things he talks about to Jack, saying that I had a family, but I kept them at bay, and I didn't understand what it was like to make that connection and what it meant and all of that. And Jack just desperately wanting to be part of something. Some people can be alone. They're built to be alone. They don't mind being alone, but others do seek that community, seek that connection. Certainly we saw that during COVID, how some people were cool with the lockdown, some people weren't. And you saw that here. And then overall, Steve, the symbolism of pulling your son out of a cult. In essence, the Borg is a cult. He's been assimilated into this to think this. You have a leader who is telling, if you disconnect him, his brain will be scrambled. He'll never be who you think he is. He'll never be all of that. And the father's love being like, no, if you're going to stay here, I'll stay with you. But we're going to find our way out together. I mean, there was so much here. Talk to me about everything that happened on this ship.
Okay, there's a lot there, and I want to start with the light fun ones, which is
Sure.
I think, just going back for a moment, there's always been this, what I think is a fairly ridiculous conflict or competition between like Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans. And I'm both a Star Wars fan and a Star Trek fan. But what I do love, the knock of Star Trek is always, oh, you guys are so talky and cerebral, and we just want adventure. And both the moments of Beverly essentially doing the run on the Death Star, taking out batteries, and Data flying in Return of the Jedi style was such a, hey, Star Wars, hold my beer. We can do both. That's the first thing. I want to talk about the Riker and Picard moment, because I found it so moving of Picard starting to say a thing and him saying, I've always known. The thing about having a thing that goes unsaid is that it forces us to create the moment within ourselves. And the thing that made me think about is there's a moment, and Mantz, maybe you remember what the actual episode is, where Riker's offers his own command and is debating whether or not to leave. And Picard says,
both worlds.
It's the best of both worlds. It's the
best of both
episode.
Worlds. That's right. And Picard says, oh, that's right. Of course it is. Duh. God, I feel stupid now. But
Shelby.
Yeah.
Well, and we see Captain Shelby.
Shelby.
So the moment of Picard saying, hey, there's no substitute for the big chair, and Riker deciding to stay, connected with this moment for me of, I've always known, is, I think for me, this is him saying, I chose never to leave my father.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that's making me emotional now, just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like that. And because Picard is the father figure who has to acknowledge his fatherness in this episode, that to me, the son that he never really says, hey, you're my son, Riker. And now he's going to go do that to save his son, Jack. I mean, the thing too, I think that, Terry Matalas, one of the basic things is I actually think he makes an asset of something that I felt didn't work terribly well in the first two seasons of Picard, which is, why the hell is Picard just hanging out in his fucking vineyard? Like, I don't get it. Like, what's he doing here? And what this season goes, what were you doing here? You were isolating yourself from your family. And the fact that the most crushing moment in the series for me is the realization that the guy who asked Picard, did you ever regret not having a family, is in fact Jack. And the pain of that moment, of the destruction of family and the creation of loneliness, the deep loneliness. And the thing is, and this is something Scott and I have talked about endlessly about the original series, but loneliness is a key factor. It's a key theme in Star Trek. Captain Kirk saying no beach to walk on, and that he'll never have love, and he's always going to sacrifice love in order to do his duty. That is central to Star Trek. That's central to Picard, and this idea of the family that we create. So now we have all of that momentum going to this moment, John, that you're talking about with Jack and Picard. And here's the thing is, I think Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2 are fantastic, but I also think there's always been a knock at the end of Best of Both Worlds 2 of like, really, it's a computer virus, you put the Borg to sleep. It always felt a little anticlimactic. And as we're driving towards a similar moment in this, it's going, are you going to be able to beat it? Are you going to be able to really deliver something? And I knew maybe 45 seconds or a minute before, I was going, holy shit, Picard is going to choose to become Borg again.
Yeah.
In order to save his son, he's going to make this sacrifice. And the fact that the temptation for these two very lonely men of evil is to be connected, literally electronically connected to each other and to this and never feel lonely again. Right. And that's what they have to defeat. And that Picard's willingness to become everything he hates and fears again, right, for his love for his son that he just met. I mean, that's so symbolic. And then that it's Jack that has the strength and to take in that moment and save them. I mean, delivering 100%.
There is
also
something.
The Borg. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was off of Steve's point about all of the loneliness and the family stuff, because this is there. Again, we all love Star Wars. We all love Star Trek. I think what Star Trek did with Picard is something that maybe Star Wars kind of fumbled in the new trilogy, which is Luke, Han, and Leia didn't have the best 30 years between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. And that's always rubbed some people wrong. And I think with Star Trek, an inherent thing has always been your family and your found family, and your found family is all your crew. And us as fans, we always love the crew, but your family is important. And I think Picard really, as season 3, deals with both sides of that. Like to Steve's point, you have Picard who clearly chose the Federation and his found family, but then even in his later years was isolating from them. Yeah. But then you also have Geordi on the other side of it, who had chosen family. And when we first meet him is like, I'm not going to help you. And he has that great fight with his kid about, they're not your family. And she's like, yes, they are. You taught me that. And what I love about this series at the end of it is everybody gets both. Yeah. Everybody gets both. You have Jack on a ship with both his parents, and you get this sense that like it's not that anybody had to choose, that this binary choice is not a real choice. Like you don't have to go, is my crew my people, or do I have to go choose my family? That in this world of happy endings, everybody gets to have both of those things.
Yeah. I have one thing to add to that.
Yes, sure.
All season long, I thought, I wonder how this moment is going to play out. And this moment never happened. Where was Wesley?
Yeah.
I thought about that too.
It's really interesting.
Where
you said she lost him to space.
Shouldn't there have been?
No, he disappeared. He disappeared. We all know he disappeared with the space guy to go off and explore the universe, and then he showed up at the end of season 2, which the less said about the better. But yeah, I was kind of wondering about a Wesley appearance, like him kind of materializing and being like, "Good job, guys," and then
but there should have been a moment between Jack and Wesley where they shook hands. So you're my brother. Yes, nice to something.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about the post-credit sequence. But even though we don't know what the future is, Terry Matalas has been pretty clear on the fact that he knows what he would do with Jack Crusher, and that what Q wants to do with Jack Crusher. And I would have to imagine that Wesley Crusher would play some form into that if we ever get to see what that is.
Yeah, we'll see. Also, people had an issue with Janeway not showing up, but we'll deal with that in a little bit. Yeah, I loved everything here, and certainly you mentioned loneliness, Steve. That's something the Borg Queen said herself. I was alone. We were alone. This idea of needing connection, and so she clawed and scratched and waited 10 years to finally enact her revenge on all of this. So yeah, the idea of loneliness being an interesting thing as a part of this, I thought was fantastic. And, it was almost like Terry Matalas was on a high wire, having a little bit of commentary about the first 2 seasons of Picard by having that interaction with Jack and talking about him being on this vineyard and whatever. And it brought to mind, and I know we got to move on, but it brought to mind to me what Spock says to Kirk, right? Your first commanding a starship is your first best destiny. Anything else is a waste of material. And Picard was essentially waiting to die on the vineyard because he was not a captain again. That's where he lives. That's where he breathes. And certainly seeing that here, he got to say that to Jack and say it to himself even more so and be aware of it, which I thought was great. So again, the deft way that Terry has been able to hit the beats of the old stuff without making it seem overt. And for the Star Trek fans who recognize it, you love it as an extra layer to enjoy the episode. Because as you guys have all said, it works on the surface perfectly great. But if you know all the references or catch little beats that echo things you've seen before in Star Trek, it adds so much more to the enjoyment as well.
I think David McKay in the chat has it right. Guinan had Wesley washing dishes in the back. Wesley's at 10 forward. He's like, oh, someone ordered the pasta again. Shut up.
All right, let's take a quick break. We've been 50 minutes dealing with it. So we're going to move over to 7 of 9 and their storyline right after this. And I promise we will get your Streamlabs and Super Chats right after this. Oh, no one sings Star Trek. All right, let's move over to the 7 of 9 story. Let me see if I've got my notes here. Aboard the Titan, 7 and Raffi, they try to make the most of their reduced crew, with one dude going, "Hey man, I'm just a chef. I was helping with my mom." And he's like, "No, just sit down. You were a pilot. Do the job, son." And they managed to take back the bridge eventually by setting their phasers to the portable beam me up and sending them down, the Borg infected crew, down to a lockdown transporter room. Now, some of you be like, "Wait, have I seen this before?" Yes, it happened on the TNG episode Gambit when a group of pirates used phasers to beam up things just by firing at them. So they did get the upper hand in this situation using an old tactic from TNG. 7 realizes, though, that the Titan is still connected to the formation. So in order to get out of it, they're going to have to figure out a way to disconnect from the fleet without the Borg realizing it. And they locate the Enterprise, and it's 7 of 9 who figures out that the reason they're on the Enterprise D is because it's analog, and that Picard and the crew chose that for that particular reason. They concoct a plan to cloak the Titan, remember, using that cloaking device that they had, and they scramble the fleet scanners and hope that they won't get caught by the Borg in this. And then 7, as the whole crew there, the makeshift crew with the doctor and everybody there having questions about it, she steps forward and delivers a fucking awesome, short, tight, concise captain speech. And in my reaction this morning, I said, that's the moment she became a captain. And I thought it was fantastic and instilled them with a lot of hope here overall. They take care of business, but eventually they go through the moment. Eventually the Borg, though, figure out what they're doing. The Borg down below, the young crew there, gets out of the transporter room. And of course, it's Geordi's 2 daughters. Who else would know where the cloaking device is? They shoot it out, and so that makes them visible to the Borg, and they are heading up there to take over the ship. And just before they do, thankfully, the Borg cube blows up. We have a beautiful moment between Geordi's daughter there, Sydney, and 7 of 9. They give a hug, and everybody is back to normal, but with a little bit of ramifications of what they've experienced here. So, Scotty, I go to you first. What did you think of all of this with 7 of 9, with her coming into her own as a commander and as a captain, and then seeing how this makeshift crew was able to get the job done until the last possible second?
Jeri Ryan, from the moment she appeared on Picard, right away, I felt like she was reclaiming 7 of 9 after her experience, after Jeri's experience making Voyager, 4 years of Voyager. I thought the character of 7 of 9 was great on Voyager, but, it was a different crew and it was a different situation. It was a different time.
Yeah.
And Jeri Ryan I've always just thought she is a great actor, and the material that she was given to work with on Picard, especially on season 3, again, just went to a whole nother level, just like with Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah.
And, this is all building, John, like you point out, to the moment when 7 truly becomes like worthy of being a captain of a starship.
Right.
So I just got to tell you, back in the 90s, I was working for Creation Entertainment. They're the company that does all the Star Trek conventions.
Oh, wow.
So I worked there for like 10 years, and I worked with this guy. His name is Joe Senna. He was the creative director there. So in the mid-90s, around the time that Deep Space Nine was really starting to take off, he said, what will be great? I have a great idea for a Star Trek series. It takes place in the 25th century, and you have the captain of the Enterprise is a Borg. That was his pitch to me in like 1995. So I'm watching the end of the final moments of this series finale when 7 is promoted to captain, and it's of the Enterprise. And I texted my friend Joe and I said, "Did you watch Picard yet?" And he goes, "No, not yet." I said, Do you remember what you told me like 30 years ago? And he goes, "Yeah." And it's like, just watch it and then text me. And then he watches it. He texts me. He goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe you remembered that conversation." but here's the thing. So first of all, we've been giving kudos to everyone for the Next Generation cast. Another person I got to mention is Brent Spiner was fabulous, fantastic this season on Picard. Also, Todd Stashwick,
yes,
Liam Shaw. Talk about an arc. Like, I started season 3 of Picard hating this guy, hating Captain Shaw, and then in just 9 episodes, I'm like, oh my God, no, I miss him. Don't leave. I love this guy. What a great arc. Todd Stashwick completely crushed it. What a great performance. And that video of him saying, like, I'm promoting her to captain, and there's this face-to-face moment between Seven and Tuvok. You know,
you're jumping ahead, Scotty. You're jumping ahead, but all right, yes.
I am jumping ahead, but I mean, the fact that you have all of this action and commotion and all this conflict going on the bridge of the Titan, and Seven never sweats. Like, she's like she is a captain that is worthy of Kirk, of Picard, of Sisko, of Michael Burnham, and of Pike now on Strange New Worlds. She is up there with the best of the captains. I thought she was great. I thought Jeri Ryan just completely crushed it. Amazing, truly amazing.
Yeah, I thought so too. Steve, your thoughts on how Jeri Ryan did handle 7 of 9, handled all of this, and of course they realized that the Borg, they're the ones who realized the Borg targeting all the major cities on Earth. They want to destroy all the major cities there on Earth. So, it goes down to something that's real close to us. It's our own planet that they're attacking here. So you're seeing that connective tissue. But yeah, like Scott said, she never sweats. She handles it. She knows where to put the resources. She's the one that does all this stuff with Raffi. It's really great. And then, at the end, she has that moment there with her and Sydney kind of connecting. And we see her reaction to what she was able to overcome here in this situation. What did you think about it?
So first of all, starting where you left off, I agree. I think that moment and it's just played in performances, it's just played in reaction shots of the knowledge that both of them share of without my own volition, have committed horrible acts of violence.
Right.
And that look between them. Yeah, and it's even because we know what happens to Picard. We know, you're going to carry this. You're not going to. This isn't going to be a quick fix. So just that moment, I think, was really powerful. Excuse me. I think Jeri Ryan's great. I think there was not a moment where I went, "Oh, she's not the captain." She's, you know what I mean? Like, there's not a moment where she didn't deserve the big chair. What's funny, and this is going to sound like a criticism, and it's totally not. When I've been on an emotional roller coaster with my original Next Generation characters, cutting back to what is fantastic Star Trek adventure top to bottom, it's not a letdown. But like, I'm not weeping at the moment because I'm not so deeply emotionally involved in it the way I was. That being said, just like we were talking about, it would seem like totally a possibility that Riker could die, or Worf could die, or Picard could die, or Jack could die, or they all could die. There was totally a possibility that Earth could die. Like, I was really, like, holy shit, how are they going to deal with this? And the methods of what they did, from taking over the bridge. And also, I even think, we talked about there being Star Wars elements. There's sort of aliens-ish elements when the out of control Borg-nish are opening up the, the transporter room, and they're coming after us. It's like, holy shit, what are we going to do? And I love the 1 minute we take for the guy who's a cook who suddenly has to sit at the helm of the Enterprise. Because that's all. Because one of the things I always think, and this again, it goes back to the very beginnings of Star Trek, is like in Corbomite Maneuver, the moments on the bridge where we're doing the countdown and you're going to die. When you watch that, you go, well, how would I react? What would I do? And the dude that's the cook who's suddenly at the helm of the Enterprise or of the Titan is like, oh, that's us. That's me suddenly having to face totally no hope, imminent death, and I just got to fight till the end. And that is where that 7 and 9 speech comes in of like, basically, this is hopeless, and we are going to fight because that's what we do, Yeah,
and I think there's fan fiction for that guy where he has always wanted to pilot the ship,
Totally.
been training, and he gave it all up because of his family and the pressures and taking care of that, the eatery or whatever they had there and all of that. And so he finally gets a chance, but he's nervous about it. He's like, no, I can't do it. I've been doing this. She's like, get on there and navigate. And then when we see what that ship does before it finally gets uncloaked, he did a damn good job driving that ship. So, Mikey, what do you think about all of this sequence here with 7 of 9 and how much Michelle Hurd finally got to do here in a storyline here in Picard that I thought was really good in showing her skills and her prowess?
Yeah, as opposed to Steve, I love
Yes.
Voyager a lot, as much as I love Next Generation. So watching 7 do anything gave me feels, and watching her sort of like go from where she started, and to Scott's point, where she started in Voyager, both as a Borg who was slowly coming back to being human again, or kind of reclaiming who she was, but also knowing the experience that Jeri Ryan had on Voyager behind the scenes, into this character that has had this long arc of living on the edges, not thinking she would ever fit into the Federation, becoming a part of the Federation, but dealing with people's opinions of her as a former Borg, trying to force her to put that part of her behind her and calling her Hanson, like just the entire arc of everything to her sitting in that captain's chair ultimately was great. And what was great about these sequences that we're talking about is, we've talked about this a lot on the show. Just because you know where something is going doesn't mean it's not satisfying if they do it right.
Right.
And they've clearly been gearing up to be like, 7 of 9 is the captain now. But all of the sequence, the cook coming onto the bridge and not knowing what the fuck to do, and 7 being like, you got to do this, buddy. Her giving that big speech to everybody, like, I'm not asking you to sacrifice your life or nothing. Like, all of these moments, they were like, this is where we are going to sit back and let 7 captain the shit out of this bridge. And they really just did a wonderful, awesome job. And also with Raffi coming in here, right at her side, these two, I love exes that come back together again. And these two are doing it right. Like, they've had their ups, they've had their downs, but when the chips are down, Raffi is right there at her side, like a number one. And kind of to Scott's point, and again, there's a lot of reasons, particularly the fact that Picard is the first Star Trek show on Paramount Plus to break the top 10 in the Nielsen's. There's a lot of reasons that I think we can be hopeful that we're going to see the further adventures of the Enterprise. G. I was like, which letter are we at now? Of the Enterprise G.
Spot, doesn't it?
But it really does. This love that Enterprise G spot. But I mean, I think kind of to Scott's point about, and Steve too, like the wonderful moments between Picard and Riker, and how they are even more wonderful because they've had 30 plus years to marinate. So when Picard looks at Riker and says, and is about to say something, and Riker says, "You don't have to say it, I know," and like they just have those moments. You've got Raffi and 7 of 9. Former exes, now her number one, this long relationship. Give them several seasons and then bring them back together 30 years from now and give them a moment like that. I'll be on my deathbed, but I'm in.
But you know what, Mike, I got to tell you, everything we're talking about with Raffi and with 7 is great because the actors playing them, Michelle Hurd and Jeri Ryan, are so good together. Last season with the two of them, I mean, they have more time together, but when they end up together on the bridge with Jack, at Spaliers, I like seeing Raffi and 7 of 9 together. And you talk about we've been alluding to what's going to happen next. I mean, there's been talk on social media about this Star Trek Legacy thing. I mean, nothing's been announced, but of course, you get to those final moments of this episode and you just go, there's no, you're watching Captain Jeri Ryan of the Starship Enterprise and you're going, I want that show. And when the fans said, I want that show, when Captain Pike stepped off the bridge of off the transporter platform of the Discovery, you see the Enterprise, with Rebecca Romaine as number one, I want that show. They listen. They do listen. And now, it's worth pointing out that with this final episode of Picard, there have now been, are you ready for this, guys? There have now been, since 1966, 883 episodes of Star Trek. With season 2 of Strange New Worlds coming, and then the next season 5 of Lower Decks, we are closing in on 900 episodes of Star Trek. And look, I'm like you guys. I love Star Trek. I love Star Wars. I love them both very, very much. But take that, Star Wars.
You know what? I was going to say, it doesn't sound like enough episodes. I think we need a little bit more.
Yes, Mike.
We will. All right. Before we get into the Return of the King 25 endings here, I want to hit these Streamlabs and Super Chats because people have been waiting for us to respond to them.
Yep.
Let's jump into them first. This Philip O'Brien says, slightly disappointed with the finale. Renaming the Titan. No Janeway. Bummer. Raffi as Seven's first officer. Odd. Some of the dialogue in the season was not good, but all in all, it hit the emotions, stirred thought, and was well acted. I loved it. So, wow, that was a journey of a post.
Listen,
there, Philip.
I agree, Philip. I didn't care for it either. I hear you. Look, here's the thing. Like, we're all having the love fest about it. There's that. Look, I would have loved to have seen Janeway. I think anybody who's been listening to this podcast as we've been doing it is clear on that. I was okay not seeing her, and we'll get into the ending with Jeri Ryan and Tuvok in a minute. But like, I gotta say, I was not disappointed, even if I didn't get everything that I was hoping or wanted, or I would have loved to have seen this or that. Kind of like what Steve was saying. Like, this is so hard to do. Yeah. And I think a part of me when I'm watching something like this, recognizing that the fact that this even exists, the fact that season 3 of Picard exists in the way that it does, is such something that shouldn't be. Like in my wildest dreams, I never thought I was going to get to see the Next Generation cast go out on such a high note that I am satisfied with my care.
With regards to Philip's comment about the Titan being rechristened the Enterprise, first of all, anytime you show a new starship and you see the words USS Enterprise on the primary hull with the numbers NCC 1701, whatever, I get emotional. I was definitely moved by the moment of seeing a brand new starship named Enterprise. But I do agree with Philip. The Titan was a great starship. It was a kick-ass starship. It was the MVP of season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and it deserved better to just, have the name wiped off the primary hull and replace it with the word Enterprise. Or you could also argue that the greatness of that starship is being rewarded by renaming it Enterprise. But I'm with you on that a little bit, Philip. As for Janeway, knowing what went on behind the scenes of Voyager.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Between Jeri Ryan and Kate Mulgrew, it is not a secret. It's been talked about. It's been written about. Now you have Janeway doing her own thing on the Protostar on Star Trek Prodigy. And here you have Jeri, kicking ass and taking names on Star Trek Picard, especially this season. This is her moment.
Right.
And it was right for her to have that, assignment given to her by Tuvok and not Janeway. Yeah. This is Jeri Ryan's finest hour, and she should be allowed to have it without anything sort of taking you out of the episode. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I agree with that 100%. Steve, anything to add to this as we move on?
Yeah, I'll be quick because I know this is just on this question. But so the Janeway thing, I am absolutely, to me, it's not a flaw in the writing or the story. I'm sure it's political. I'm sure it's behind the scenes. I'm sure that's what it is. As far as the Titan thing, I know absolutely nothing about how this went down, but I'm going to tell you exactly how this went down behind the scenes. which is that like one of the issues is that one person said, "Oh, this show's going really well. We should launch a new Star Trek show, and there should be a new Enterprise." And then they went, "Oh, 7 of 9 is so great. She should be the captain." And then they went, "Oh, but the new Enterprise should be like a new cool ship, like the new flagship that's awesome." And they went, "Oh, But then 7 and 9 probably wouldn't be the captain of that. She'd be the captain of the Titan. And then someone else went, oh, I got it. We renamed the Titan as the Enterprise, and then all of our problems are solved. And I think that is, and then I'm sure Michael can.
Yeah, Michael's been in those rooms.
This is how this goes.
I mean, I think Steve's probably right about that room. I think what's more interesting is within the world, everyone at the Federation is sitting there and be like, oh, fucking Riker and Picard just fucking hijacked that fucking spaceship, man. What, those assholes? They just think they can just go hijack a spaceship, and somebody else is like, well, they did kind of save the universe. And you're like, well, should we change the name of the Titan to the Enterprise? And someone's like, isn't that kind of rewarding really bad behavior? And they're like, you know what? Fuck it. Give it to them. That's the part that I find really funny. Like two dudes stole that spaceship and just flew it off, and then they were like, yep, let's call it the Enterprise.
All right, JP Scarlet Spider, thank you very much. NLSFC 96, thank you so much. Also sent in, this was a love letter to all of Trek from before the Abrams verse of Trek. Also, it was a quintessential Picard show where we see his character arc end on love and him changing forever. Yeah, is that true?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's ultimately what makes this great, is that this show, for all of the nostalgia and the Easter eggs and every character having a moment and this reference to DS9 and Voyager and Bubba and all the things that we're talking about, this is, hey, you know Captain Picard, your favorite captain who had no emotions? Let's force him to have all the emotions by revealing that he has a son, pointing out that he doesn't have a family, and making him face his worst enemy ever at the same time, and end in a better place than he's ever been. And so, like, as a arc for a singular character, it's great, surrounded by all the other awesome geeky stuff that we're talking about.
Right. Gentlemen, anything you want to chime in on this one, or should we?
I think people miss what one of the biggest and most important assets, the genius of Star Trek, is not that they create these perfect heroic characters. It's that they create these characters that are awesome and also have deep sadness and loneliness, whether it's Spock or Kirk or Picard or a whole bunch of other great, or Data. Like, the great characters have these flaws. And what this season of Picard did was that's what we're going to get into. We're going to get into Riker's flaws, Data's conflicts, and of course, Picard's deep loneliness and all of those things. And that's what makes it good.
Yeah, I agree with Steve 100%, because, we talked about this many times, Steve, you and me, about one of the things that makes Captain Kirk so great is because he is flawed, because he made mistakes, and he would learn from his mistakes. And sometimes he would be called out on his mistakes by his own best friends, Spock and McCoy. And, that is something that is carried from 1966 to 2023. That's why we love these characters. They're flawed and they grow.
Yeah, I did nothing except get caught with my britches down. I must be going senile. Mr. Savage, you grow right on ahead and keep quoting regulations. Exactly. NLSFC 96 says, it was also the most perfect send-off with the crew for the crew I grew up with. Perfect that it would end on a card game. We'll talk about that, with scenes between Jack and Picard, and also Riker telling Troy, Thad and I will be waiting for you. Yeah, that was, I didn't mention that. I should have mentioned that. Yeah. That moment was powerful, gentlemen.
Well, oh man. Yeah. And it's like, again, taking some of the stuff, and this is a thing that good writers do. I think it's pretty clear, as John said earlier, that season 3 exists because there was an awareness that a lot of season 1 and the majority of season 2 of Picard is not the best. But they didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, the stuff that happened. You can't take back stuff that exists and is in the universe. So when you have stuff, whether it, when it existed, even if you think it's all flawed or imperfect, you still take those pieces, like one of those pieces being the fact that Deanna and Riker lost a son. And I think that they used those pieces to the best of their abilities, like really like made them land really, really nicely.
Yeah.
There were so many, I've seen so many people online say, oh my God, I'm so sad that season 3 is over, that Star Trek Picard is over. But think of all the joy that the 4 of us, and to everyone watching here on Geek Buddies, will have going back and rewatching season 3 of Picard over and over and over again, and capturing, and finding all of those moments, all the Easter eggs, all of the nods to the past shows and the past movies that they didn't see maybe on the first few viewings. For example, I rewatched That's the Last Generation episode of Picard this morning before I signed on with you guys. So towards the end of the episode, when you see the Enterprise D and the Titan flying off together over the Earth towards the sun, and you hear Captain Riker's captain's log, it's a star date, shall we say 1. That reminded me of the end of Star Trek 6 when you see the Enterprise fly into the sun, second star to the right, straight on till morning, to boldly go where no man, where no one has gone before. I did not pick that up. Not even when I saw it on the friggin' IMAX screen, I didn't notice that. So that's the joy. And that is the joy, really, of Star Trek, is watching these episodes over and over again. Steve, how many times have you and I and Johnny, you, or the three of us, watched TOS hundreds and hundreds of times, and we still find new stuff out of it? And there are now like almost 900 friggin' episodes of Star Trek. Like, we don't need television. We have Star Trek. We're good.
It's a symbolic moment. As Michael said, it was the Excelsior. That's what they're going off there. And it's a passing of the torch. And that, in essence, is the same thing, passing of the torch here with that Riker monologue there with those two ships going up. And Anthony Boadogo says, Next Generation era and films got the proper ending the cast deserved. Amazing creators, especially Terry Matalas, made this great Star Trek possible. Let's move space and time for an Enterprise G sequel. Well, as Scott said, if the fans talk, sometimes they listen.
If you got to move space and time,
one thing I got to tell you, guys.
I
spoke to Terry Matalas at the premiere the other day, and we were talking about the death of Captain Shaw, and he said, "I have a great idea to bring back Todd Stashwick." He told me what the idea was. He told me not to say anything. The point is,
well, you're doing a piss poor job.
I want you to break the news, Scotty.
I am not telling you his idea. What I'm telling you is this guy, Terry Matalas, is going to be involved in another Star Trek show. Mark my words. Well, everyone wants it to happen, and they listen to the fans.
The other thing he said that I thought was very, very smart and just great world building is he talked about the Assimilation as a blip level event in the Star Trek universe, meaning that, this was our season finale. Everyone 25 and under in the fucking Federation was assimilated out of nowhere. And then, like the Enterprise came in and saved the day. But for the period of time that existed, everyone was connected in a way they had never been connected before. And then that was taken away and it was gone. And so he was saying, like, this is like the blip in Infinity War to Endgame. Like, this is something that has repercussions that you can't imagine. Right. Add to that the very first Borg captain in the Federation, which I'm sure Shaw was not the only person who would have reservations about something like that. And then particularly after the events of this finale. And I think you've set up a world where it's not just the typical Star Trek stuff, but there's like really cool in-world stuff to explore there that would put a different shade on this show than any Star Trek has had before.
Good point. Phil P says, Jean-Luc saying he'll stay brings Jack back. He'll stay, and that brings Jack back. Wow. Yeah, emotions. Certainly. We talked about that. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that as well. Let's see. Phil, another one says, no Janeway. Sorry, Vogel. That's the only missing piece for him.
I think Scott and Steve are right. And like I said, I was sad not to see her because she is my favorite captain. But I do think that this season was definitely 7 of 9s, and I am more than happy to give it up to her.
And to be fair, in this story, Kate Mulgrew did do an interview, I think back in 2015, where she took responsibility for what happened and she took ownership of it. Did she fully go all the way? No, but she took ownership of what she felt. And she was like, I wish I'd handled it more professionally, because some of those stories you heard about how she telling her she had to go to separate or to hold her bathroom, all that stuff is just kind of going to the bath. It's just kind of crazy. But, there's professional jealousy. There's also stuff that was going on there. Also talking about it as a woman, seeing a woman like JERI Ryan showing up, it replaces this whole thing. There's a lot of that's really tough to explore. But the ownership of it, I think that speaks volumes that she was able to say. And she said, JERI deserves all the goodness, all the greatness, all the love from the fans, blah, blah, blah. So it's not like Kate has stayed angry at her. It's certainly a very gracious response in the end.
The fact that JERI Ryan just did an interview really recently to promote this final season, where she said that she actually had a lot of reservations about going back to Star Trek, and she like had a glass of wine or whatever, like
Romulan ale.
All it over.
Yeah.
John, I know you know about these books, the 50-Year Mission, Volume 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So Volume 1 of the 50-Year Mission book covers the original series and the movies. Volume 2 covers Next Generation, everything else, and the Kelvin timeline. And JERI Ryan and Kate Mulgrew, did a new interview for this book where she basically fessed up. Yeah, hey, I made some bad decisions doing Voyager, and I feel bad about that. So I'm paraphrasing. That's not a direct quote, but if you want to read more about what went down, 50-Year Mission Volume 2 it's a great read anyway. But you'll find your answer there.
Can I also say it's a great listen? I'm an audiobook person, and if you do the listen, you would hear the voice of the great John Rocha as one of the voices on the book.
I wasn't going to say anything, but thank you, Steve. Yes, I did. By happenstance, a friend was in charge of that who was at Harry Potter, and he said, "You do voiceovers. Do you want to come and do a couple of days on this Star Trek book?" I go, "You don't even have to pay me. I'll go do it right now." And
did you voice Scott Mantz?
No, I wish. That's a tough ask.
I think I'd be good at it. Oh my God.
It's a tough ask. But no, I did some of the actors who couldn't record their own. So I was basically imitating some of them in there. JP Scarlet Spider says, this season of Picard is some of the best Star Trek in a long time. I so hope we get to see the continuing voyages of the Enterprise G in a Star Trek Legacy series.
Same.
We definitely talked about that, JP.
Hashtag
Thank
same.
You. Hashtag same. There you go. And then Streamlab Travis Earl said, this is the best Trek in ages and one of my favorite Legacy sequels. The sentimental, nostalgia-filled final 15 minutes of the episode, which we're about to talk about, was fully earned emotional perfection. Bring on Captain Seven's Enterprise series. Wayne Edwards says, hello, gents. I still haven't seen the finale, but I had to drop into this live episode with some of my Geek Buddies, and thanks for the weekly after shows you guys have been doing every week. It means the world. Oh, thank you, Wayne, for both me and Mike. And Steve, who come to, and Scott now. Adam Jimenez says, my takeaway from season 3 is that Shaw was right about everything. I never thought I would get so attached to this new captain. Yeah, certainly. And as Scott said, there may be plans for the return of Scott Shaw. Or, I mean, not Scott Shaw, of Shaw here. So let's take a quick break, and we'll jump into the last part of the Star Trek Picard finale here right after this. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button right now. Hit that like button. If you're watching later, leave a comment. Certainly, Steve, Scott, Mike, and I have had a lot of comments and opinions about this. What are your thoughts and opinions on our opinions as well on all of this? Let us know down there as well. Send in your Streamlabs and Super Chats. I'll hit them at the end here for anybody who wants to send in some new ones. And we'll be right back right after this. That's perfect. That's perfect. All right, I'm going to do my best to throw these into a quick synopsis here, but we do see Jack go back aboard the Enterprise here, and him and his mom have a wonderful hug. I almost voiced it over like, Mom, you were right about those guys. I shouldn't have gone out that night. That's what it basically looked like in that hug there. Riker and Deanna have a beautiful kiss. Data and Geordi share a tender moment there on the bridge as two old friends. And then Worf sits down next to him. And I love what Terry did with the camera, panning back out. And then Worf, like an old man, is quickly asleep, which I thought was hilarious. And then we hear, as Scott pointed out, Riker narrating his captain's log, which is, let's say call it one, the first of a new day. We learned that Beverly discovered a way to fully purge the Borg of the Borg DNA from the officers here, develop technology to allow them to root out.
I'm sorry, that's Admiral Crusher to you.
Well, not yet. We are going to get there and allow them to root out and any of the remaining changelings hiding out within Starfleet, which we saw in that transporter moment. And then we see Seven meeting with Tuvok, as Scott has mentioned earlier in our review, who survived the changeling attack, which I think speaks a little bit positively about the changelings, that they didn't want to mirror the torturers. They, although took them, they didn't kill them, they replaced them. So I think there's something to be said redeeming about the changelings there. But anyway, she wants to tender her resignation, and Tuvok says no, and then shows this video from Captain Shaw, knowing she was captain material, which I've been saying for weeks on this show, and she is given the captaincy here, which I thought was really sweet. He even calls her 7 of 9 in by her name there in the video, and then talking about by the books and breaking the laws and breaking the rules. And then the ones that she breaks are great. Raffi gets an emotional closure moment too, as well, as she's seeing this video here, and we see Worf come up from her family, accepting her son wants to see her and that wants to have her hang out with her grandchild there. Worf comes in, and we find out that somehow all her commendations have been leaked, and her son saw it, and that's the thing that kind of put him over the edge to want to see his mother here. A sweet moment between the two of them, as well as warriors saying goodbye to each other. Data is adjusting to his emotions and having these therapy sessions with Deanna Troi, who is looking at vacation spots the whole time she's talking to Data, and Data apparently goes an hour over his time all the time. And there's a fun little back and forth between Deanna and Riker there as Data walks out from his last session. Then we jump a year ahead, and Jack is in the Starfleet uniform, and he's pacing back and forth. We hear them have a conversation about him being a Nepo baby. And then we talk about the, as you guys have mentioned here, the Enterprise being renamed in honor of Jean-Luc Picard, the USS Enterprise G, the Titan rather, being renamed as the USS Enterprise G. And Jack says names mean almost everything. And then we see, as we spoke about, Jack on the ship there being greeted by Captain Seven and her new number one, Raffi. And Jack's wondering, where am I going to be sitting? What do you want me at? All this kind of stuff. And he said, should I order the crew to head to Metalis? Nice, Terry, putting yourself in there. But he says, no, Jack, 7 of 9 says, no, I'm going to need you here as my consultant on the bridge there. I want to keep my eye on you in case any more nonsense happens, which I think that's her point there. And then we see Picard, who is there at the 10 forward with the rest of the crew. They're all drinking. They're talking about the prune juice or whatever it is that they're drinking, all the different stuff they're doing. It leads to them playing poker around the table, which is, of course, a shout out to that episode, to the finale episode of the Next Generation series. And then we get to a post-credit scene with Jack there in his quarters, and who shows up but Q, who supposedly died at the end of Picard season 2. But Q is back, and Jack knows about Q. Apparently, Picard has told him about Q, and he said, "You already judged humanity." He said, "No, I judged Jean-Luc. Now I'm here to judge you." And we go to Black Frame. So who do I go for? Steve, why don't you take this away? Your thoughts on all of this stuff here that we got to wrap up Star Trek Picard season 3?
So first of all, I agree with Scott, with you and John, who both said this is the return of the king of Star Trek. It totally is. The fact is, if the show had ended with Worf, old man, snoring on the bridge of the Enterprise, I would have been cool. Like, that moment to me was
I've had those days.
It's such all the time.
Yeah,
it's all the time. It's such a perfect moment to me. I have it's why Return of the King is such an appropriate reference, because I really like all these moments. Like, in terms of narrative drama, we're at a lower level. In terms of seeing 7 and 9 react to Captain Shaw, say what he said, I was crying. The moment of Picard, and it's totally referencing Star Trek motion picture, but even more so Wrath of Khan, of Kirk in a shuttle flying towards the Enterprise. When Picard sees that it's the Enterprise, great. Yeah, absolutely great. The stuff with Jack on the bridge and being assigned as counselor, less interested in that. Okay. I really like the characters. I love that Raffi's the first in command. The moment of what's she gonna say is her catchphrase word.
Great.
I wish that we hadn't made this a fan thing of each captain, because then they had to do a thing to deal with the fact that this was a fan thing and have us not hear it. I don't love that as much. I totally get why other people might have loved it. Q and John Delancey. Okay. I adore John Delancey. I love Q as a character. I think that was a mistake.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. I feel like that Star Trek has gone to the Q thing enough, and bringing, like, going, hey, we're gonna do Q again. Like, and sometimes it's been really great. Like I said, I love John Delancey. I love his character. And sometimes Q episodes have been great, and sometimes not so much. And I'm like, I wish we had something different. That's what I wish.
Okay.
Bring back Tom Riker.
Scott, please. Your thoughts on all the stuff that.
Okay, Mantz.
Come on. Like, Tom Riker. One of my favorite episodes of Next Generation is Second
Agreed.
Chances. Yeah. I think Jonathan is great in that episode. I love that one. Well, Steve, I see your point about, I'm just going to go backwards, Steve, because Steve is kind of right. I just felt like, okay, you're going to have a bonus scene to tease, and the Q thing has been kind of played out. I'm like, I wasn't dissatisfied with it, but I didn't have that moment that I had at the end of the first Iron Man when Nick Fury, recruits Tony Stark to start the Avengers Initiative. I didn't have that kind of like, holy Toledo, that was awesome. I thought it was cool. I definitely loved the cut when Raffi says, okay, so what's your order? Make it so, take us out. And the camera zooms in on her and she talks and you see the Enterprise like speed off into warp. I love that we don't know. So of course, at the Q&A the other night, in front of everybody, I said, okay, JERI, what was Seven's order? And she says, I'm not telling you. So I just love it. Look, there's so much to tease, like that this is not the end. This is not the end of the road. More will be coming. I guarantee you, as much as I guarantee that John Rocha will return to Enterprise Incidents, that is how much I guarantee that you will see a new Star Trek series, like Legacy-ish.
Thank God.
Not Starfleet Academy, not Section 31, which I'm excited about, but the kind of Star Trek that we're really, really looking forward to. But all the stuff, with the card game, I thought was great because it throws back to the end of All Good Things. Yeah, you could just see how much these characters and especially these actors playing them really do love each other. The span between Encounter at Farpoint to the Last Generation was 36 years. Just to put it into perspective, the span between the Man Trap and the Undiscovered Country for TOS was only 25 years. So you've got this much, much greater span that made all of these moments that closed out the series finale of Picard so rewarding. And I kind of wish, maybe the Titan, maybe kept its name. I do love seeing the Enterprise on the hull. I love Q. I love John Delancey. Maybe that was a little bit of a, like a notch down after a 10, but I still loved every minute of it. And this has been said so many times, gentlemen, here and elsewhere, but this series finale really did stick the landing.
Yeah. Yep. Steve, if it had been Wesley, would that have been better? Not as Q, but just replacing Q and him like welcome him to the Federation.
Oh,
maybe having a back and forth. Would you have enjoyed that?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. Might have been more in the vein. Michael, your thoughts on all of the things that happened? Yes, Captain.
Yeah.
Yes, Admiral. Yes.
Well, first of all, I was very happy that Tuvok was okay.
Yes, you were.
I've been very concerned about it, and I'm very happy that he was fine. I was glad to see him. But then, as happy as I was very sad because I realized 30 seconds in that I was going to have to come onto the show and say that Rocha was right, which is truly my least favorite thing to do. But yes, Rocha was right. Shaw knew that Seven was Captain material long before I thought he did. So he is an even better guy than I thought he was. And so I'm happy to report that this is one of the very few times that Rocha was right. And like I said before, I mean, being a Voyager fan, I got all the emotions. Like Jeri Ryan listening to Shaw, 7 of 9 listening to Shaw say that she was Captain material, and then Tuvok saying resignation denied, Captain. Whew! It got me. Like it fully got me. It was so good. And then, even though Raffi's journey with her family throughout seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Picard has not been, I thought, the greatest storytelling.
It's been that strong.
I think that they stuck a landing on something that wasn't the strongest story, and they struck it because they didn't just make it about Raffi's family, but they made it about Worf and Raffi's relationship. That Worf did this thing that was above and beyond to sort of fix his friend's life. And when they had that goodbye with each other, I thought it was just really, really lovely. And then you followed that up immediately with just some classic Next Generation comedy with Data and Deanna. Like Data just like, oh, I've got feelings now. Let me hold you hostage for 2 hours while I talk about my shit.
Daily.
And Troy being like, yeah, okay. And then just that little final button with Troy and Riker where Data leaves and he's like, it's fucking crazy, right? Like they just have that great, you're like, okay, these two are good. So all of that was really, really lovely. I love a good piece of writing, and Picard telling Jack that names mean almost nothing, and that it's not the Picard name that got him the advanced movement through the Federation, followed immediately by the Enterprise reveal and Jack leaning in and saying, because names mean everything. It was just A+ writing, so good. I loved seeing them all on the bridge. It felt very, very much like, hey guys, this is the show. This is the show if you want it.
Yeah.
But I want it, so I was okay with it. I'm a nerd and I'm a geek and I am the fan that they would like to service. So I kind of love that we've created this thing where each captain needs their own thing, and that they were like, we're going to tease you up until the last point and then not give it to you. But I don't think Steve is entirely wrong. And it is a thing that once you establish it as a thing, you have to keep doing that thing for every Star Trek that you Star Trek. And eventually you're going to be like, hey, like you're going to run out of things to say. As far as the Q of it all, I'm gonna file this under the category of I trust Terry Matalas that he knows what he wants to do. So I don't think that I'm gonna ignore season 2 of Picard for a minute, because I think season 2 of Picard is just like we're just gonna admit that nobody really had that was no good. Like, so that was a return to the Q well that was not a good return to the Q well. Aside from that, Q was in the Next Generation, like he was there. We haven't gone back to him that many times. I mean, he was a key part of All Good Things, but even that moment with him was kind of left on a, we'll see where this goes with Q.
Right.
I think Q is a dangerous character. Having written for Discord on My Little Pony, who is basically Q in the My Little Pony world, voiced by John Delancey, I know how hard it is when you have a character that has all the powers in the world, because it's very hard to contain a story around them. But I think if Terry Matalas has a plan for what he wants to do with a character like Q that has been obsessed with Picard and is now obsessed with his son, I feel just like I felt safe with this finale. I feel safe that will be a Q story worth telling.
So can I jump in, because I have an idea. I'm saying really, really fast, but so you brought up the idea of Wesley coming back, and Wesley's been off with the Traveler, learning the secrets of the universe, being able to transcend time and space, and he shows back up, and Jack meets his brother for the first time, and Jack says, so man, should I call you, what do you like? Should I call you bro, like Wes? Like, what do you like to go by? And Wesley turns back and looks at him and says, actually, you can call me Q, and disappears.
Ooh. Or what if that's the Steve Morris rewrite? We all love the Steve Morris rewrite.
Love a Steve Morris rewrite.
Or you could have had the moment where this is the bonus scene, and Wesley introduces himself, and then Jack says, "Shut up, Wesley."
I mean, that I'm into. I will say I wouldn't be surprised if part of what Terry Matalas has planned is that, as Wesley Crusher has been off learning all about traveling through space and time, and Q is a being that can travel through space and time, that whatever story Q has, Wesley as Jack Crusher's half brother could play really easily into that. The only two things I'll say about the poker scene at the end, it was beautiful and lovely. Yeah. I love that Terry Matalas just let them play poker.
Yeah.
Like, he basically was like, hey, you guys just play poker and have fun with each other. I'm just going to film it for a minute. And he said, I think he said he has 45 minutes of them playing poker, and it's just like, he'll put it in the B-roll, on, special features. This is the only thing. I was fine not seeing Janeway. I would have pooped my pants if Whoopi Goldberg had just come around behind that bar and told him to get the fuck out. I feel like of all, Guinan coming out for that one final moment would have been just chef's kiss to me.
Yeah. Fair point. All right, now I'm going to chime in. I enjoyed. I mean, I got emotional with the Tuvok scene for sure, and I like the Tuvok like laid out all the shit that they did, and you guys did this, you guys did this, you guys did this. That was all against the rules, but we know you. This is why you did it. And then she's like, "Let me stop you. I don't want." We've all been there. Look, if you're going to fire me, just fucking fire me. Don't give me all this buttering bullshit. I want to get out of here. And he is like, no, and then plays that. And again, shout out to Todd Stashwick and his performance, recording this and just kind of the emotions he goes through, because initially it looks like he's going to berate her and say negative things. And he does bring up the way she breaks the rules and all these kinds of things, but then says, but those are the hallmarks of a captain. Those are, because you juxtapose that with that opening scene of this season when he's like, yeah, you two yahoos, cowboys, breaking rules, stealing ships, doing all the things that you're doing. And it seemed like he hated people like that. But here he is, like, basically using that as a way to kind of burnish her resume and why he thinks she'd be a great captain. I would argue he probably thinks she might be a better captain than he is. And I have a feeling that that's there as a layer, as an actor that maybe Stashwick was playing, because I think that came through. And seeing Jeri Ryan's reaction. And I know Scott brought this up, and I want to reiterate this even more. I think this was also, as we saw with them playing poker, this was also, in a way, Terry Matalas, who we know the story that Terry, became friends with Jeri and was giving her the sides when he was a PA. And so they have that connection. I think this was Terry's way of saying to her, like, you are now no more questions, officially accepted and fully part of Star Trek. Throw all that bullshit out that happened in the past. Jeri Ryan is Star Trek. Star Trek is Jeri Ryan. Enough. And I thought that was great. What a great thing to do for a friend, and so to finally just 100% close the book on the fact of how she got in and all that, and just push it all away. She is a captain now of a Starfleet or a Federation starship, but I thought it was great. I loved them hanging on the bridge, having the cheers moment where they walk out and someone's got to turn the light off on the bridge, like they turn the light off on the bar. That was so sweet to have that there. I love the Geordi situation here. What's going to go further with Geordi? I don't know where we're going, but I'm excited to see that with his daughters and all that. What are we going to get? Data here. That's so funny. Like you said, her flipping through the vacation spots was really funny. But then we get this conversation when they're on the bridge or they're on the shuttle there going in, and the conversations are happening, and Jack pacing back and forth. We have Picard talking about, oh yeah, I walked a light year waiting for my first assignment and all of that. But then we see the emotion of Picard. And this is a way also Picard gets a little bit of acceptance too for the character in this moment. A guy who had pushed himself out onto the vineyards, who had pushed himself away from the Federation, away from his family and his friends. Here he is being accepted back into the Federation by them renaming the ship. I know some of you may not like it. I liked it. I like Picard. I like it. Titan, sorry, I don't have 35 years of love for you like I have for Jean-Luc Picard. So I'm okay with them renaming the ship in that way. For me personally, no problem if you had an issue with it. I just liked it overall. The Q's and I love the warrior to warrior stuff between Raffi and Worf. That was just great. It was really sweet, them honoring each other, him releasing that stuff. And Michael, you made an excellent point. A storyline that was kind of wonky for 2 seasons and seemed like thrown in to give her some drama as a character. Terry found a way to streamline it and hit the mark exactly right. So you got the feels for that emotion. And Worf calling himself, this really cool maverick who did things like this. It's perfect. But the honor Worf gives Raffi is like the show giving honor to Michelle Hurd for the work that she's done, because sometimes she's been criticized, that character's been criticized, and I feel like that was Worf. Michael Dorn, the legendary Michael Dorn, who's been on more Star Trek shows than almost anybody, saying to Raffi, saying to Michelle Hurd, go be with your family. You've done the great work here. You are a part of this. And then when she ends up on the ship as the number one with 7 of 9, I thought was another way of just fully accepting Michelle Hurd once and for all into Star Trek. No more questions. And I thought all of that worked really, really well. The Q stuff, I can see how some people might have an issue with it. But for me personally, what Terry was able to do with this season, I'm like, okay, let's see what you do with Q. If you get a Star Trek Legacy, I have now expectations that you will knock it out of the park and redeem, like he redeemed the Next Generation from that Nemesis movie. He redeemed him by giving him a fantastic send-off. he can do the same thing with that Q story from Picard season 2 and do a different thing here that redeems Q back into a better light and gives him a good send off as well.
I know there are people out there that felt like, oh, here we are, it's the Borg all over again with this, which I would disagree with because I felt like we did the Borg in a really different way. But I do think Terry Matalas in season 3 of Picard kind of told, in my opinion, it's the final Borg story. Like, I don't think there's another Borg story after that. I think you took something that you're like, we've gone back to the Borg a lot of times between Next Generation and Voyager and everything else. And I think this was like, we've closed the book on the Borg. We clearly have closed the book on Next Generation here. Like, we have said, this is the final story. This is them. This is their happy ending. So if he wants to tell the final Q story, I'm down. Like, I don't want anyone else to do it. I'd prefer he do it. So why don't we just let him do it?
Possible. Very possible. All right. Well, it's 2 last Streamlabs here. Adam Jimenez said, my takeaway from season 3 is that, we already said that. Sorry about that. Vegetable Tube said, love Picard season 3. Congratulations to Matalas and his writing room team. Look forward to Captain 7 and the crew on the Enterprise G. And then Brian Brawler sent in something saying, this is strictly because Michael referenced Baymax. There you go.
You're welcome. And I hope that you too are satisfied with your care after watching this live episode.
Agreed. Well, let's go around the horn. Steve, your final thoughts on this season of Picard here in our universe.
I liked it.
All right. Good.
I think so. Again, I just want to highlight two. One is how much they hit. So in addition to just having all the references from Antov, Checkov, and all sorts of references to all sorts of Star Trek, just putting that aside, you have, I think, the most consistently good characterization of Worf we've ever had in anything.
Great point.
Top to bottom through the whole series. I think we saw more depth in Riker than we ever saw, top to bottom in the whole series. And then you had things like Data finally, I think, delivering on the promise of what we really wanted from him. They had parts of him gaining emotions in various episodes, in various movies, but this was the one, the unification of Data, and in particular, him smiling as he drives the Enterprise into the Borg ship, where it's like, we finally have given Brent Spiner what he deserved. You have relationships like the Geordi Data relationship that they absolutely nailed and made really moving and powerful. You had Picard and Beverly with that brutal scene where he finds out that she's lied to him about the son and them resolving their relationship. You have Picard and Riker. You have Picard and Jack and his son and all the internal stuff of Picard and his loneliness and him coming to the end of that and coming to the end of his conflict with the Borg. You have 7 of 9 and Shaw. You have Shaw's relationship to Picard. I mean, these are all the things this is delivering. Raffi, who I think is great, who's a character who I've always liked, didn't always like how she was written. And here's the thing. Scott knows, and I've said it many times, my favorite Star Trek series is the original series. That doesn't change. But one of the things that Scott and I have talked about a lot is the batting average. Is it's not just how many great episodes are there, but how many not so great episodes are there. And while season 1 and season 2 of the original series are fantastic, there are some real losers in there. And while, Next Generation has as many, if not more, great episodes of Star Trek than the original series, I think its batting average is pretty mixed, particularly in the first 2 seasons. Season 3 of Picard has the best batting average of any Star Trek ever. There is no weak episode. There's no episode. I would say there's no episode that isn't really, really good. The worst it gets is really, really good, and most of them are excellent.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing.
Fair points.
Well, in all fairness, you're talking about a season of 10 episodes.
Yes, absolutely.
29 episodes of season 1 of the original series, 26 episodes of season 2 of the original series. And the Next Generation, except for season 2, there were 26 episodes. That's where a writer's strike was going on in 1988. You have 26 episodes of Next Gen, 26 episodes of Deep Space Nine, and so on. So, but I agree that every episode of this final season of Star Trek Picard was absolutely great. There's not a dud in the bunch. Just like Steve, my favorite Star Trek of them all is still the original series. It is informed who I am as a person, followed close behind by Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. But this final season of Picard is the best Star Trek has been since Deep Space Nine and since Star Trek First Contact. And I got to say that this is no slouch at all to the first season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the first season of which I really, really, really enjoyed. But there were a couple episodes in there that weren't so hot. But every episode of this final season of Picard has been great. This is, I mean, yeah, you talk about, you know, this the return of the king of Star Trek. It is also a 10-hour Next Generation movie.
Yes.
It is a movie. It's not just a series that is streaming on Paramount Plus, which is very, very cool. And I'm actually streaming it right now while with sound off while I'm talking to you guys. But it is epic. It is cinematic. You can watch this on the big screen like many people have, and it fits. Terry Matalas did a spectacular job. The cast, the production design, Dave Blass, having Doug Drexler, Mike Okuda, and Denise Okuda come back to do some of the production design, especially on the Enterprise D bridge, was great. Having the score, the music was fantastic. Every performance was top notch. Star Trek has always been overlooked by the Emmys. The original series was nominated twice for Outstanding Drama Series, the first and second season, not the third. Leonard Nimoy was nominated for Supporting Actor for each season he played Spock. The only Star Trek series to win Best Series is the animated series, which won a Daytime Emmy in 1975. Of course, we will talk about that at some point on Enterprise Incident, Steve. But it is time. It is time for the TV Academy to recognize Star Trek in ways more than just visual effects or you know, craft stuff. It is time for them to honor Star Trek as a dramatic series, for writing, for certainly performances, especially when it comes to Jerry Ryan and Jonathan Frakes. But this is a Star Trek has been in decades, and you know, we still have season 2 of Strange New Worlds to look forward to on June 15th. I can't wait. It's a really great time to be a Star Trek fan, and it has never been better than it is right now. Talking about the series finale of Picard with the three of you guys.
Gentlemen, agreed. Mikey, your final thoughts, season 3.
Look, we talk about a lot of stuff on here, and we'll talk about seasons of shows that we didn't love all of it, and we've talked about seasons of shows that we really thought were great all the way through, but this is a different thing.
Yeah.
And this is what has made this so much fun. Like, every once in a while, a story comes along that just gets every single thing from like the broad strokes to like the minutia exactly right. And you just sort of sit back in amazement. And you go, how did this even come to be? Like, how did this thing happen? And I know all you guys, your number one is the original series. I came to Star Trek as like a 90s kid. And even though I went back and watched original series and I love all of the Star Trek films, this is my crew. Like, Next Generation is the crew that I became a Trek fan with. And it was always, like I said earlier, such a disappointment that Nemesis was the final note. And for this thing to happen, and not just happen and make me so happy, but to watch over the 10 weeks that it's come out, the momentum that has built up online and in the ratings, and just see everybody come to this show and recognize it for how great it is. Like, it's something truly special. And I said this on Twitter last week, but the thing that has been the greatest joy about this is it's like, Star Trek fans, I told my friend this the other day, Star Trek fans have all been hiding in the bushes like the Munchkins at the beginning of Wizard of Oz. We're all like Star Wars fans, and other fans are like strutting around being like, look at me, I got my TV shows, I got my Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then all the Star Trek fans have been hiding, and Picard has brought all of them out on Twitter. Like, all the Star Trek fans are like, whoa, we have something to celebrate in such a major way. And I feel like this show has done more. And I love Discovery and I love Strange New Worlds. And I think there's a lot of, I love Prodigy. Like, I think there's a lot of really good Star Trek out there. Lower Decks is super funny, but this show has done something really amazing. And it's just, I'm so grateful that the Next Generation cast is going out in such a, like, watching them all play poker in 10 Forward.
Yeah.
That's the ending that we all wanted and the ending that we needed. And I'm glad that we got it.
Yeah, Scotty, it was as the outlaw, it was always a pebble in my boot that there wasn't a Star Trek belt. And Christian always had a Star Wars belt in the Schmodown, which was horseshit. I always wanted a Star Trek belt, lobbied for it consistently. He never agreed to do it. It was frustrating.
Too bad.
It's too bad. But yeah, listen, the reason we fall in love with film and television is because of the magic. And we are fans at our core base of things because we seek the magic. These things in a lesser way are like drugs. We seek the magic. We want to feel the magic. Part of what sometimes corrupts the toxic fandom is this anger that they don't get the magic or they're not feeling the magic. But as fans, we want that. This season was magic. This season was magic from the opening bell to the end. It was magic. I agree. Not one episode fell down. Not one episode didn't work or felt like filler or was a waste. I could go back right now today and watch all 10 episodes back to back. And that's something I rarely would do with anything. But because of the emotion, but not just the emotion, the scripts, the writing, the intelligence behind this thing, it all worked so well. And walking that tightrope of weaving the past into the future in the present of the show worked so well as well and gave us all great final moments with all these fantastic characters who have given us, as Star Trek lovers, great moments in our lives, in formidable times in our lives, maybe taught us lessons and taught us things that we've used going forward in the future. So to give them the proper send-off with a season like this was just fantastic. And, you know, especially someone with the incredible grace and talent of Patrick Stewart to get to have a final season where this beloved character gets to have this one fantastic final adventure, and with everyone on board going forward as well, was just great top to bottom. So I'm not going to say more than that. Terry Metalis, we all fucking love you on this show, and we all thank you for promoting our reviews here on the Geek Buddies. And we also want to say thank you for giving us this season of television because we've enjoyed it every single second. So thank you very much. All right. Well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for Picard. I'm sad to see it go. I'm going to be emotional. I'm going to watch that finale 2 or 3 times this weekend. I'm sad to see it go, but we are looking forward to seeing what's coming in the future to boldly go where this franchise has never gone before. So we're looking forward to seeing what we're going to get there. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks for the Streamlabs Super Chats. Thanks for the lively chat as well. We appreciate it madly. Scotty, we'll start with you. Where can we find you? Where can people go and see everything you got going on? You got so much going on. Tell us.
Okay, well, I'll just got to cut to the chase. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Movie Mantz. That's my handle right there at Movie Mantz. And tomorrow I'm going to post the link. So for everyone who was not able to see my Q&A with the cast of Star Trek Picard at the IMAX Theater the other night, it's going to be posted tomorrow. So I will share the link on my Twitter handle. So at Movie Mantz, and make sure, talking about Star Trek, Steve Morris and I, Enterprise Incidents with Scott and Steve, we went through a deep dive of each and every episode of the original series, probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my professional and personal life. Steve has been a great partner. We are now more than halfway through the animated series, of which Johnny will be back on very, very soon. But make sure you check out Enterprise Incidents with Scott and Steve. We've had Walter Koenig on. We've had William Shatner on our show. And we have also had 6 times director Ralph Sinetsky for each and every episode he directed. And he is going to be 100 years old on May 1st. And what better way to celebrate the 100th birthday of a legend, a Star Trek director, than by listening to all of the episodes. He joined us for all 6 of them. That was awesome.
Yeah, very much so. Steve, please, where can they find anything going on?
So just to highlight that, the conversations with Ralph Sinetsky were the greatest things you could possibly imagine. The guy's memory, way better than mine, like was literally going, well, that was take 2. Leonard flubbed the line on the first take. And so we did that. I mean, like, it was crazy having him walk him through these shows that he directed. You can find me at SR Morris. And of course, with my other partner, John Rocha, we do the Cinephiles. And with our special guest, Scott Mantz, we are currently right in the middle of the Social Network. We just released episode 1 today. How many episodes will it be? It's not going to be 2. It will be at least 3. Will it make it to 4? I don't know. We have not moved quickly, but it's been a great conversation. And if you want to reach me, it's SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram.
It's true. The first part was the first 15 minutes of the movie. I don't know.
You guys kidding me?
It
You
was
know what?
insane.
You make fun of me on our weekly show for talking too much, but come on.
That's true. It's true.
I could hear you talk
Mike-
all day, Mike.
Yeah, Mike is great.
Aw.
Mike, give us your where people can find you and answer this question. Is Laris still waiting for Picard to show up? Poor Laris. What's gonna go on?
I did think about that, guys. Like, he broke up with her.
I'm
Like,
sure-
like
it seems like he's with Beverly now, so maybe
he's
did.
like, look, Laris, like, Laris is just out of the picture. Like it's Picard and Beverly now. Like, I feel bad for Laris. Like, she really put up with a lot. Like, she really went through, she's that girlfriend that you had that, like, you went through all of your issues with, and then you came out a better person at the end, and then you went back to your ex, and you're like, well, now it works because I'm a better person, but it was really, like, the other person who got you there. Like, Laris did the Lord's work, but
Yes, you did.
but Beverly got his son.
She might be better off though, to be fair. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Where can they find?
You can find me at, am I doing me or am I doing the whole thing?
Oh, that's right. Yes, we are Geek Buddies. Michael, please tell them where they can find us. Everything are going on.
Man thinks I'm a guest on his own show. Look at this. Well,
Fair enough.
you can follow us on Twitter at geek_buddies, on Instagram at _geek_buddies. You can follow Mr. Rocha at the Rocha Says. You can follow me at MKToon. And if you liked this live review today and you want to check out all the other amazing and ridiculous stuff that we're doing here at the Geek Buddies, here's what you can do for us. You can smash that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, check out all the amazing content he has got going on there. Leave your comments below and let us know what you thought of this season of Picard. You guys have been awesome in the chat, but if you're watching this later, leave your comments below. What did you like? What did you hate? What do you want to see more? What do you hope happens in these hopefully future Star Trek episodes and episode series that are coming up? If you're listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some comments and some stars. Helps us go up in the rankings so more people can find us. And as always, the best thing that you guys can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. Thanks so much for joining us on this journey, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode or spoiler review episode here from the
Geek
Buddies.
Keep going boldly.
Hey!